If you were paying close attention in my last video, you might have noticed one shot where I was wearing a brace on my hand. Or maybe you noticed this sequence where I was awkwardly assembling this footstock with only my right hand. And that's because I tore a tendon in my thumb. As someone who works primarily with my hands, I don't recommend this. It's kind of a downer, and it really slows down the progress I struggle to make on projects anyway. So I thought I would do this video to explain why I'm going to be a little bit slower than usual. So first things first, this wasn't a shop injury, it was actually a kayak injury. I had to dig back into my archives for some footage to help explain this, but I was doing a loop. It's a front flip on a wave in the kayak. It's something I've done thousands of times, but this time I hurt myself. Basically, I just hit it against the boat really hard and pulled the tendon off the bone. So I'm going to be in this little splint for about the next month. I've already been in it for about 3 weeks. But I think this serves as a good jumping off point to answer some of the questions that keep coming up in the comments. First question, what's your background? Are you an engineer? I am not an engineer. I actually have a degree in geology, which I don't use other than I'll say that getting that taught me how to learn and how to problem solve. In terms of being a maker of things, I've kind of always had those tendencies, but what really got me serious about it was whitewater kayaking. There's a really long history in whitewater paddling of making your own gear. 50 years ago, if you wanted to run whitewater, you had to make your own boat. Well, I've only been paddling about half that long. That really intrigued me, and I kind of read up as much as I could and jumped in and started making things. Which leads into the next question. What do you do for work outside of YouTube? So the thing about making things is if you get good enough at making things, then other people will want the things that you're making. I designed and built a whitewater open canoe for myself that was good enough that other people wanted one. So I started my own canoe company, and I've been doing that for about 14 years. How do you find time for these projects? The canoe business kind of goes in fits and starts. It's very seasonal. When it's slow, I work on other projects, the stuff you see here. Unfortunately for me, or fortunately for you, the past couple of years it's been a little slower than I'd like. So it seems worth putting some effort into this YouTube thing. Where do you get all that rusty scrap? Do you go magnet fishing? So again, the answer is kayaking. I live in an area that was kind of the cradle of the Industrial Revolution in the US, and it turns out that the rivers that are good for whitewater paddling were also the ones that were good for powering mills. So this kind of stuff is just kind of laying on the banks. No magnet required. I'm also involved in an effort to clean up one of these areas and turn it into a park. I talked about it in this video, but the analytics tell me you didn't watch that one, so here are a couple of pictures of one pile that we pulled out of that. This pretty much filled up a 40-yard dumpster, and some of it came home with me. And once you get the reputation of being the scrap metal guy, your friends start giving you cool hunks of crusty metal too. Rustinox asks, where did you learn to make videos? Did you go to some video making school? If you guessed, hang on a minute. If you guessed kayaking, you got it right. I spent a few years as a sponsored paddler, which is basically a combination of athlete and marketer. And since a lot of the time we were doing really cool stuff out in the middle of nowhere, big part of it was shooting and editing videos. Some of my friends were talented enough with it to go on to work for Discovery or Nat Geo. I ended up on YouTube, but I picked up a lot along the way. Those were good times. Let's do a question that the answer isn't kayaking. This one came up a couple different ways, but we'll sum it up with, how do you find old tools? I'm just going to kind of go down the list of machines, starting with my Logan Model 200 lathe. This was built in 1944. I found this one on Facebook Marketplace. I paid $200 for this. When I got it, all 4 of these gears, well, they were missing more teeth than a professional hockey team. But even without the power feed, I was able to get some off-the-shelf gears and face them down, bore them to size, and got it fixed up. It also came with the original collets and collet draw tube, and I sold that for $150 to somebody that wanted the original one. The piece behind here that holds the bevel gear for the power crossfeed was also broken, but between a lathe and a grinder, I was able to make one that works well enough. My milling machine is a 1947 Index Model 40H. I also found this one on Facebook Marketplace. I paid $600 for this one. This thing popped up on Facebook Marketplace, and I hemmed and hawed a little too long before I messaged the seller and got sold to someone else, and then a few days later popped up again. The person that bought it decided they didn't want it. It's got this very large but only half horsepower 3-phase motor on it, and they didn't want to deal with the 3-phase. But I had a spare drive for my CNC, so I just used that. This was originally a 2-speed motor. I just wired into the faster set of windings on it, but then I used the original switch to control the drive. So, faster position is 60 Hertz. Slower position is 40 Hertz. Then I realized there's one position where both are off, and since it runs on a binary, made that one 50 Hertz. And so that does a pretty good job of mimicking the original speeds, plus gives me one in the middle. Like the lathe, it's also pretty worn out, and it had some issues when I got it. The biggest one was this trapezoidal gib here was broken, but it was good enough that first mill project was to make a new one. Other issue with it is it's also got this collet chuck that's stuck in the spindle, and I cannot get it out. But while we're talking about that, if you watched the last video on the dividing head, you'll know I picked up some Brown & Sharpe number 9 collets, which are what this takes. These are a little disappointing because they're not brown and they're not sharp either. I also found a couple of Brown & Sharpe 9 end mills on eBay for a reasonable price. These are at least kind of brown and they seem pretty sharp. And I even went ahead and made a drawbar for the mill, which it never had, because the collet chuck is just so stuck it didn't need one. So obviously I'm working pretty quickly getting ready to get this thing out. I've got a couple projects coming up where I'm going to want a little bit more rigidity than this thing offers, so you'll see that one pretty soon. I also have to make a whole bunch of Brown & Sharpe 9 tooling, fly cutters, and so if you want to see that, stick around. While we're at the mill, we might as well do the other questions that have come up on it. When will you rebuild your milling machine? I've been talking about this one, and the answer is eventually. I'm going to get around to it. I think the last thing that's holding me up is I need a master precision square. Been kind of working on that off and on. And I also just need to find time. I pretty much just collect projects now, and this one's been put on the back burner for now. Will you ever put a DRO on your milling machine? The answer to that one is yes, after I rebuild it. Right now, this milling machine is not worth sinking a lot into, but after I rebuild it, I want to do a DRO, automatic oiler, power feeds, and make it just really nice. So back to where I find these things. Sanford Surface Grinder, another Facebook Marketplace one. I think I paid more for this than any of the other tools. I think this was $7.50, just because they're pretty rare. This one was made in 1961. I had a playlist on cleaning this one up and what was wrong with it, so you should check that out if you want to know more about this one. Delta Drill Press is from 1942. This one I actually found by the side of the road. One of my neighbors was cleaning out and giving it away. I've also got a series on restoring this one. The cross slide table on it, though, I got from Facebook Marketplace. Well, actually, I was picking up some other stuff from the guy, and he had this too. The shaper, Facebook Marketplace, $3.25. Needed a lot of work. The serial number on this one's outside of the range where there are good records, but it's probably about 1920. The power hacksaw, $50, Facebook Marketplace. The viewer pointed out the date code on the motor for this is from 1953, which kind of fits with when I thought it was from. And this chip tray I added does a really good job of containing the mess. You just need to clean it better. You haven't seen this one yet, but this is another Facebook Marketplace score. This is a J.D. Wallace Workace 14-inch bandsaw. Pretty low serial number. I think this is from about 1929, 1930. It's got a pretty interesting reduction on it to get it down to metal cutting speeds. Obviously needs a bit of work, but for $3.95, you can't go wrong. I think the reason I've had a lot of success with Facebook Marketplace is because it does learn what you're looking for and makes suggestions for you. The other suggestion I would have is to look for the listings where the seller has other listings for other tools. I've picked up a lot of tooling for pretty cheap, kind of bundling together that way. What made you pick up machining as a hobby? So I talked a little bit about this one in the electric moped video. Basically, I got into playing with old mopeds, needed to make some parts for them. To do that, I needed a lathe. Started looking into mini lathes, found this old Tony's mini lathe video, and fell really deep down the rabbit hole. Shortly after that, I got the Logan, and well, I think you know how this story goes. Next question, what's going on now with the Jeep? Well, the Jeep is still here. Obviously, the thumb thing has slowed progress way down on it, but still trying to get some things done. What has been the biggest challenge so far? Biggest challenge on this thing so far feels like finding time to make progress on it, but I think building the mag brake really slowed me down. That was tricky, but I got it done, and I think that was worth it. Honestly, though, I think the thing that's giving me the biggest challenge right now is planning out the best way to do the custom input shaft for the transmission to mate it to the electric motor. What are the abilities you've acquired on this project that you're most proud about? In terms of the skills that I've built doing this, what I'm proud of or happy with, Honestly, it's everything and nothing. I've never done sheet metal work before, and I'm pretty proud of how I've progressed with that, but I'm still not happy with the results that I'm producing yet. I think the biggest thing I'm proud of is jumping into something that I don't necessarily know how to do, but I have the confidence to know that I can learn how to do it, just learning a lot along the way. Last set of questions. Stormdrifter asks, why are we here? Is there a God? Why won't that itch go away? Best answer, I think, for that first one is we're here to try to make the world a better place in whatever way we can. Just be nice to each other, and if you do that, I don't know that that question's really that important. As far as that itch, I can't help you on that one. You should go see a doctor. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting, and if you did, give me a thumbs up because, well, I can't right now. I'm going to kind of keep working through the projects I can right now, probably do some stuff off camera, but it just takes a lot longer, so hopefully you want to see that, and if you do, stick around and don't do anything stupid.